Last summer, I took on a huge project, a data analysis report on urban planning, and the deadline was looming. Every day in my apartment, the sound of my upstairs neighbors drilling, the arguments from downstairs, and the endless calls from delivery guys made it impossible to concentrate. I desperately needed a completely quiet place where I could immerse myself in code and data from morning till night. So, I rented a small cabin deep in the Adirondack Mountains online. The reviews said it was secluded, which was exactly what I was looking for. I arrived on an overcast day, the air thick with the damp, earthy smell of the woods. It had rained heavily for days, and the muddy country road was flanked by tall pine trees, standing like silent sentinels, their tops disappearing into the low-hanging clouds. My phone signal was completely dead here. I truly felt cut off from the world. The cabin looked older than in the pictures, its wooden walls bleached by the rain, and the roof thickly covered in moss. Surrounding it was a dense forest, the tree branches intertwined, blocking out the sunlight and making the whole place feel eerie. After settling in, I began to enjoy the rare tranquility. During the day, I'd walk the trails, listening to the wind through the treetops, feeling incredibly relaxed. But on the third night, something strange happened. I was reading when I suddenly heard an odd dragging sound outside, like something heavy being pulled across the muddy ground. It was faint and intermittent, but I heard it clearly. I got up and went to the window, peering out into the pitch-black night. Only the distant tree shadows swayed in the wind. I saw nothing and thought it might just be the wind blowing something, or perhaps a small animal. But just as I was about to turn away, a blurry dark shape darted through the trees, moving so fast I barely caught a glimpse. My heart skipped a beat, but I still tried to reassure myself that it was probably just some large animal. This was the wilderness after all. Over the next few days, this unusual feeling intensified. Every night, that dragging sound would reappear punctually, sometimes accompanied by faint knocking, as if someone was trying to open the door. I became paranoid, even feeling watched during the day. One evening, I was washing dishes alone by the small creek outside the cabin as dusk began to fall. Suddenly, I felt a chill down my spine, as if someone was standing right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing. However, I noticed a small wooden doll on a rock by the creek. It was made from twigs and some wild grass, odd-looking, like some primitive totem. I jumped, startled. This was definitely not something I had left. I looked around, but the woods were silent, save for the wind. Who was it? Who had put this here? My heart pounded, adrenaline surging. I quickly ran back to the cabin and locked the door with multiple bolts. I started checking the windows and found that one of them had a loose lock. I propped a chair against that window. Fear slowly consumed me. I knew this wasn't an animal, nor was it a coincidence. Someone was nearby, and they seemed very interested in my cabin. That night, I was jolted awake from a deep sleep by a rapid knocking on the door. It wasn't ordinary knocking. It was more like knuckles scraping against the wood, one after another, slow and persistent. I held my breath, not daring to make a sound. The noise continued for about 5 minutes, then abruptly stopped. I peered through the peephole, pitch black, nothing to see. But just as I was about to give up, I noticed a clear set of barefoot footprints on the muddy ground by the door, leading straight into the deep woods. All the blood drained from my body. Those footprints were much larger than my own. The next morning, I found my car tire slashed. It was clearly a knife cut. I was terrified. This meant I was trapped. I had to find a way out, but my phone had no signal, and walking out would mean going through that eerie forest. I didn't know if that person was still out there. I went back inside the cabin, grabbed a kitchen knife, and sat in the living room, unable to close my eyes all night. That night, a thick fog rolled in outside, reducing visibility to almost zero. Around 2 a.m., I heard a strange sound on the roof, like someone crawling. My whole body froze, my heart pounding in my throat. Then, something heavy slammed against the living room window, and the glass shattered with a deafening crash. I was scared out of my wits and jumped up. I saw a dark figure trying to climb through the window. The figure was tall, almost completely shrouded in the fog, only a blurry silhouette visible. I grabbed the kitchen knife, trembling all over, but I knew I had to fight back. One of his feet was already inside the room. With all my might, I slammed the chair against the figure. I heard a dull thud, and the figure staggered, then fell backward with a strange, low growl, like a wounded beast. I rushed over and blocked the window with everything I could find. I didn't know if I had truly repelled him, or if he would come back. I leaned against the door, the knife clutched tightly in my hand, my body stiff, my clothes soaked with sweat. I didn't sleep a wink until dawn broke. As soon as it was light, I couldn't bear to stay any longer. I temporarily boarded up the broken window with some wood and rocks, then decided to walk out. All the way, I kept looking over my shoulder, constantly feeling as if someone was following me. I didn't know who that person was or why they attacked me. I only knew I had to get out of there as fast as possible. When I finally reached the nearest town and saw signs of civilization, I felt like I had come back to life. I immediately called the police, but they told me the area was very remote and it would be difficult to track anyone down. They would patrol, but I knew it was just a small comfort. Since then, I've never been back to that cabin. Whenever I'm alone and hear a strange sound outside my window, I immediately become tense. The images from that night, the blurry, tall figure, and those barefoot footprints, are like a persistent nightmare, deeply etched in my mind. To this day, I still don't know who attacked me, or what they really wanted. That wooden doll, the broken window, and the slashed tire have all become an enduring mystery in my heart. Sometimes I wonder, is he still out there in those woods, waiting for the next intruder? Last summer, I decided to go camping alone in the wilderness, just to completely unwind. I'm not really a social butterfly, so for me, finding a quiet spot in the wild for a few days, listening to birds and stargazing, is pretty much my ideal life. I picked a place about 2 hours' drive from the nearest small town, where cell service was practically non-existent. Exactly what I wanted. I parked my car on an abandoned logging road, threw on my backpack, and hiked for about an hour until I found the perfect campsite. A flat clearing surrounded by tall pine trees, with a clear stream nearby. By the time I had my tent set up, dusk was settling in, and everything around me was incredibly quiet, except for the rustling of wind through the treetops and the distant hoot of an owl. It felt good, a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I built a campfire, grilled some sausages I'd brought, and boiled some water for tea in my coffee pot. Once night fully fell, the whole forest was cloaked in darkness, with only the flickering light of the campfire. I listened to the faint signal of a distant country music station on my radio, and it felt like pure bliss. I stared at the fire until sleepiness crept in, then I crawled into my sleeping bag. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I was suddenly jolted awake by a sound. It was faint, like someone stepping on a twig in the woods. My heart immediately started pounding. I told myself it was probably just a small animal, like a deer or a raccoon. I tried to calm myself down, closed my eyes, and attempted to go back to sleep. However, it wasn't long before the sound came again, and this time it was closer. It sounded more like someone moving slowly and deliberately. I held my breath, straining my ears, trying to make it out. Then I heard a strange dragging sound, as if something heavy was being pulled across the ground. This sound filled me with a strong sense of unease. Cautiously, I picked up my flashlight and peered through the tent's mesh window, but it was pitch black outside. I couldn't see anything. I started to feel really nervous, my palms sweating. I even wondered if I was imagining things. Maybe I was just groggy from sleep. For the next few minutes, I lay motionless in my sleeping bag, my body rigid. I heard the dragging sound getting closer, and then I started to smell a strange odor. It wasn't campfire smoke. It was an indescribable, earthy, decaying, and pungent smell, very much like old blood. I could feel whatever it was right outside my tent, not far at all. My breathing became shallow, and my heart pounded so loudly I thought it would burst. I told myself I had to find out what was out there. I abruptly pulled open the tent zipper, and my flashlight beam instantly shot out into the darkness. My hand was trembling, causing the light to sway. In the flashlight's glow, I saw a large, blurry silhouette standing less than 10 feet from my tent. It was tall, with its back to me, seemingly dragging something deeper into the woods. I only managed to glimpse its broad back and thick limbs, along with that strong, nauseating foul odor. I was frozen in fear, forgetting to even breathe. The thing seemed to sense my light. It stopped, and then very slowly it turned around. I didn't have time to see its face, or even its full shape, because the moment it turned, it lunged towards me with incredible speed. All I managed to see were two glowing red eyes, and then my tent was struck with immense force. I screamed, dropping the flashlight. The tent poles screeched as they broke, and the entire tent instantly contorted, collapsing on top of me. I felt something cold and hard furiously tearing at the tent from outside, like sharp claws trying to rip through the fabric. I struggled desperately, trying to crawl out from under the tent. I knew I had to get out of there immediately. I scrambled out from under the collapsed tent, not bothering to grab anything, and stumbled towards my car. I heard heavy breathing behind me, and the loud snapping of branches. I knew it was chasing me. My lungs felt like they were about to burst, and every step felt like I was running on cotton. I don't know how long I ran, just desperately pushing forward through the dark woods, the faint glow of my car's headlights in the distance my only hope. I finally saw my car, my only chance for survival. I yanked open the door, dove inside, and quickly locked it. The thing reached the car almost at the same time. I could hear its heavy breathing right outside the window. It furiously slammed against the car window, the glass groaning ominously, as if it would shatter at any moment. I could even feel its cold, rough skin rubbing against the glass. That foul, pungent odor grew even stronger, filling the entire car. I shakily started the engine, slamming the gas pedal to the floor. The tires screeched on the ground as the car lurched forward. In the rearview mirror, I saw the large black shadow being left behind. It seemed to linger for a few reluctant seconds before being completely swallowed by the darkness. Since that night, I've never been back to that place. Every time I recall that night, that huge, stinking black shadow, and its glowing red eyes, I get shivers down my spine. I don't know what it was, or what it wanted with me. But I know that deep within that forest, there are truly terrifying things that are beyond our comprehension. Whenever it's late at night, I always think of those red eyes glowing in the dark, as if they are still there, waiting for the next unsuspecting visitor. That incident happened 3 years ago, but to this day, I can still feel the icy air of those woods and a chill that settled deep in my bones. Back then, I had just broken up with my long-term girlfriend and was in a bad place. To clear my head, I decided to spend a week alone at my grandfather's old lakeside cabin. It was in northern Michigan, and by late October, the tourists were long gone. It was exactly the kind of quiet I was looking for. The cabin was old but cozy, filled with the smell of pine and old books. My only companion was my golden retriever, Buster. The first 2 days were peaceful. I'd walk with Buster along the lake, watching the gray water lap against the thinly iced shore. At night, I'd start a fire in the hearth, drink a beer, and try not to think about anything. The strangeness began on the third night. I was getting ready for bed when Buster suddenly started whining at the front door. I figured it was a deer or a raccoon, and went to look through the peephole. The porch light illuminated nothing but empty space. I patted Buster, telling him he was just being paranoid. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something small. On the doormat sat a single, small, perfectly smooth black pebble. I didn't remember putting it there. Maybe it got stuck to the bottom of my shoe. I didn't think much of it, picked it up, and tossed it into the nearby bushes. The next morning, the strangeness returned. As I was making coffee, I saw another identical black pebble sitting on the kitchen windowsill. A shiver went down my spine. I had checked that every door and window was locked last night. How did this get in? I did a full sweep of the house, but found no signs of a break-in. Buster was on edge, too, sticking to my side like glue, his nose constantly twitching at the air. That afternoon, I took Buster for a longer walk in the woods than usual. In the middle of a clearing, I saw something that made my heart stop. Laid out on the ground, made from the same black pebbles, was a huge, perfect spiral. The pattern was intricate, absolutely impossible to be a natural formation. It just lay there silently on the fallen leaves, like an ominous sigil. I immediately grabbed Buster and ran back to the cabin. At that moment, I knew this was no prank. This wasn't weird anymore, it was a threat. I felt like an animal that had wandered into a predator's territory, and the predator was marking me in a way I couldn't comprehend. Back in the cabin, I locked everything I could, and even wedged a chair under the front doorknob. The sun went down quickly, and the sound of the wind outside now seemed menacing. I held Buster close, sitting in front of the fireplace, my hand tightly gripping a heavy iron fire poker. Around midnight, Buster suddenly tore himself from my arms and began barking furiously at the large picture window in the living room. This wasn't his usual bark, it was a desperate, aggressive roar filled with fear. I didn't dare turn on a light. Using only the faint glow from the fireplace, I crept toward the window. I carefully parted the blinds just a fraction of an inch and peered outside. A man was standing there. He was less than 10 feet from the glass, perfectly still. He was tall and gaunt, dressed in an old-fashioned, dark suit that seemed decades out of style. But the most terrifying thing was his face. In the dim light, his features were unnervingly blurry, as if his face were a smooth, flat plane, with no eyes, no nose, and no mouth. My brain went blank, unable to process the surreal sight. It wasn't possible. It had to be a trick of the light. Just then, the man slowly raised one hand. His fingers were unnaturally long and thin, like a spider's legs. He extended his index finger, and from across the glass, pointed directly at the spot where I was hiding. Then a low, rasping voice I had never heard before echoed, not in the air, but directly inside my head. "Saw you." I screamed and stumbled backward. At the exact same instant, a loud crash came from behind me, from the direction of the kitchen, the sound of shattering glass. My head whipped around, my heart pounding. He wasn't alone, or the thing at the window was just a diversion. Buster was already charging into the kitchen. I heard his furious snarls, followed by a man's low curse, the thud of something heavy falling, and Buster's pained whimper. "Buster!" I shrieked. Fear and rage overwhelmed everything. I gripped the fire poker and ran like a madman into the kitchen. A man in a hoodie and a ski mask was standing by the broken window, a crowbar in his hand. Buster was lying at his feet, motionless. He saw me, froze for a second, then raised the crowbar and started walking toward me. His movements were calm, without hesitation, as if he were just taking care of a chore. I could see his cold, emotionless eyes through the mask. I screamed and swung the poker with all my might. It connected with his shoulder with a sickening thud. He grunted and took a step back but didn't fall. The look in his eyes turned murderous. I had no time to think. I turned and scrambled out the same broken window he'd come through. The freezing air stung my skin. Shards of glass cut my arms and face, but I felt nothing. I had only one thought: run. I bolted into the black woods, running blindly. Branches whipped at my face, and roots nearly tripped me countless times. I didn't dare look back. I could hear footsteps behind me, not rushed, but steady and relentless, like a tireless ghost. I don't know how long I ran. When my lungs felt like they were on fire, I finally dove behind a massive oak tree, curled into a ball, and clamped my hand over my mouth, terrified to make a sound. I could hear the footsteps pacing nearby, searching. After what felt like an eternity, they thankfully faded into the distance. I stayed hidden behind that tree all night. It wasn't until the first light of dawn that I stumbled onto a highway and flagged down a trucker. The police later went to the cabin. They found Buster. He was dead, his neck broken. The house had been ransacked, but strangely, nothing of value was taken except for my laptop. What puzzled them the most was what they found on the kitchen floor. Someone had used hundreds of those same smooth black pebbles to create an outline, the exact shape and size of my missing laptop. They never found anything. No fingerprints, no suspects. No one in the area had seen any suspicious people or vehicles. The faceless man in the suit outside the window might as well have never existed. The incident destroyed me. I sold the cabin, moved to a new city, and have never gone anywhere remote since. I have frequent nightmares about those woods, about Buster lying in his own blood, about that smooth, featureless face. But the detail that truly keeps me from sleeping was something the police told me later. While going through my grandfather's belongings, they found a dusty old box in the attic. Inside was a diary. The final entry, written a week before my grandfather passed away, contained only one sentence. "He's here again. This time he brought stones.